Everyone, I'm Mark Grasse. Welcome to Podcast Mark, where we talk about personal development, professional development, and business development in that order, trying to find a balance between all three and just making progress and trying to find happiness. So I'm very happy to have James Hilliard on the show. We're going to be talking about probably starting with transitions, because I think right now a lot of people are going through some big changes in their careers and their family life. Odd things are happening all over the place. And I think it's good for, guys like us to come together and kind of talk about the transition process, the difference between business ownership and kind of corporate life, and the fact that it's okay to quit stuff and find what you want to do. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you for having me on. And yeah, I agree with most, most, if not all of what you said. That, I think transition's a really good place to start. Yeah. Why don't we dive in?
Yeah. So you talked about, right before we got on, how you made that corporate transition into trying to, go out on your own. And, it's not a perfect process. So why don't we just start with kind of how you did that?
Yeah. So it kind of rolls back 5 years, really, 6 years to kind of make a decision. And kind of one of my first step or first guidance for anyone is make a decision. The reason why you haven't left, if you are trying to transition out of corporate life, is just the decision hasn't happened yet. And there comes a tipping point when you can do that. And that happened for me in 2018. And I really didn't know what I was going to do beyond that. And I walked away with the plan to just kind of do some soft retirement, retire from working with missions I didn't want to believe in anymore, retire from working with people I didn't want to work with anymore, and think about something different for me and trust in my own innate ability to figure it out. Because I really had no plan, and I don't recommend anyone does it my way. They've got to do it their way. So
that's a good way to start it. Like, have your own way. But I think the problem is that a lot of people make that transition during like the most stressful times. Like, you know what? I've been planning on this for a million years, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And then they flip the tables and they storm out. And I think, like what you're saying, if you could just plan it out, maybe just think about it a little bit and then do the transition when it's not like the most urgent situation, but it's just a natural flow. I love the making the decision is a great point.
Yeah, and I documented a 7-step process. I called it Exit with Integrity, but you can now do that even if you're just transitioning from one zip code in an organization, industry, company to another one, because that's your next place where you might have entrepreneurial skills, but you're better off being an entrepreneur inside the company.
Oh, love that.
But if you want to get out, then then following that step, and decision's the first one. But and then that was it. I transitioned away, did a little bit of consulting, moved from having a job to owning a job. Didn't really like that early transition, and then figured out, I need a system. And so it was a year after I'd been out of the building that I created a system. And just a fluke that it happened before COVID kicked into high gear. Wow. And so that was that was an interesting time. But luckily I'd made my mind up, create this system, have something that people can take with them for life and use that system, because it's still relevant, all of the content. But it's just something I fell out of love with. Personally, I did it. It was fun. But I fell out of love with it pretty quickly. So I think you said at the top of the show, it's okay to quit.
It is. Well, and that's actually a really good point, because I think that is the transition. Like me personally, I have contracts with companies now, and I'm consulting and doing that kind of stuff. And, it doesn't feel like business ownership. It feels like a different type of job. So it's not super surprising that you kind of tried it out and were like, wait a second, I'm stuck in multiple places now.
Yeah, and that was it. I wasn't having fun. So I was juggling things, not having fun, not enjoying it. And I wasn't having fun when I was leaving what I was doing. So it's kind of, for me, I've got to move to find some fun. And I took 4 or 5 months off again to just kind of sit, look at the sky a little bit. Just, how do I have fun? What are the things that I love? And we were talking before we came in air about, well, actually, my fun is in the gym. My fun is being healthy. My fun is with my family. My fun is traveling. How do I do more of that? And I actually get a lot of fun out of giving stuff to other people, whether that be financial assistance or actual, real help, where you actually help somebody without an expectation. And so that was where I went to next. And so that kind of gave me the impetus to do what I do now, which is, very different from those early days.
That's fantastic. Well, and you know, it's not perfect. A lot of people think they're going to make this seamless transition and start the $1 million business, and then yay, 6 months go by and I'm killing it. And I think it's much more like, you know, the process that you're finding where it's just like, or you found where it was, I left and I did some stuff and it took some time off. And I love the time off too, because I think that's a big thing that people miss, where they think they could go from, you know, basically the same 9 to 5 for maybe 10, 20, 30 years. And then like, oh no, now I'm going to be at home. It's like, oh, that's a different life. So how do you kind
Yeah.
of prepare people for that? Just the change of schedule.
Well, that's powerful, right? So I always think about in terms of identity. So one of the major reasons that someone might feel like it's difficult to leave is because the company, the industry, the career they're having is their identity. So if you leave that career, you're walking away from yourself.
Mm. Oh
And
yeah.
it's a really difficult thing for people to get to grips with. And you express it really well, is that you walk away, and I had a career in another organization prior, and the company goes with you. It's a part of you. And it takes a while to kind of let that disperse and let that energy go from what it was like to be that employee in that place, in that channel where you were growing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be a while before it goes away and you care less about it. You
Oh
still
yeah.
care about it when you leave. Lots of people I work with tell me, I still want to do a good job here, even though I'm not enjoying it. And I'm like, yeah, because that's your pride and your ego saying, stay safe, do a
This
good
is
job,
familiar.
work hard. Because we're told work hard when
Mm-hmm.
we should be told work less. But we go out there thinking hard work's going to get us the answers. And it isn't. It's not that at all. It's about, are you having fun?
No,
And
yeah.
are you patient with yourself and taking the time for yourself to think about, how do I design the life? Have this lifestyle design that's actually what I want to be doing. So everything's fun. And
Oh,
most days, I'm not saying there isn't
yeah, it's not
niggles.
100%.
I had a niggle yesterday at the dentist, but there are life niggles that are going to come, but you just handle them so much more smoothly when most of what you do is fully enjoyable. Yeah.
I love that. That's a really good perspective. And but it is very easy to get stuck, you know, because it's not just that you know, say you're comfortable there, but you're told you're comfortable there. It's like, hey, you got a steady job, you know, got a raise 6 months ago, like you're liked, you're everybody says your performance reports are great. And you've been in this culture where literally you've spent the majority of your waking hours around the culture. And honestly, from a business development and even a marketing standpoint, like that's what we teach people to do, is indoctrinate your employees into your culture and make them feel at home so that they don't leave and they do a good job. And so it's not just that it happens, it's supposed to happen. Like it's an intentional thing that companies do, because that's the best way to get, you know, the best work out of people and have people for a long time, so you don't have to deal with the turnover. So I think there is a you know, I don't know, I'm not gonna call it brainwashing, but there's a definite you know, culture that's intentionally made to make you stay. And it's hard to break out of that. So in terms of just a technique for, because I find myself doing it too, where I have this mindset of like, okay, here's how my day goes and here's how it always works and blah blah, and then it's gone. And it's like, no, do whatever you want. And you're like, I don't know how to do that anymore. How do you get people to open up to like, hey, let's find out what you like to do and what fun you like to have, and how your days really should be structured moving forward?
Yeah, that's crucial, right? Isn't it? And people talk about, well, money is a resource that you need access to. Time is the most valuable resource. And I disagree with all of that,
Mm,
because you walk away from your job, you have this feeling of, I've got all the time in the world, but you've still got to pay attention to something.
mm,
The mistakes I see people make is they don't pay attention to the right things. And so all of the distraction and noise of the 21st century gets in our way. And so we don't get to where we want to go fast because we're listening to everything out there. We're not filtering in the right way for us. And that needs to be tied to what you love to do. But I think why does that happen? Why do people still get stuck? And then maybe I talk a little bit about, what would be a way to think about structuring a week or a day, or,
mhm,
I think it happens when we are no longer who we are. It happens when we disconnect and isolate because there's some kind of testing relationship, whether that be a worthy opponent who's competing with you for a senior role or a more responsibility, or you're looking at something that's outside of you, that's someone else is getting promoted ahead of you. You kind of as you feel stuck. And that's about relationships and what kind of relationships you've built. So I think that people get missing that part missing. But the biggest bit I see is that was for me true, and I think it's true for my clients and my community, is this missing element of you're not creating something of magnitude anymore.
Mm.
The job is done. And many times, you could be in a company 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. You've actually done the job. You do the job on autopilot. And so then you feel a little bit of the flicker of the flame inside you is always dim. And it's dim because you don't have a meaningful pursuit, something to chase, And, I'm married, and the meaningful pursuit of chasing my wife was great fun. So and building a family, and that's what it's got to feel like. It's got to feel intoxicating. And when our job doesn't do that anymore, we feel like we're stuck. We feel, where do we go next? So sort of strategies. Then I think about where would be a good place to start is just to conduct an exercise in quiet in your head first of what are the 3 or 4 things that I love to do and I'm actually really good at.
Mm.
And I did this exercise. I went down to Michael's or one of those art stores, got a big pad and just put a blank sheet of paper in front of me and just poured on my head, okay, what are the 3 or 4 things? And and I struggled coming up with 4, and I kind of think about what are the 3 that I have to feel whole, an alignment, who I am. And one was coaching and teaching and guiding, that kind of concept of how can I coach people? I just love that. I've been really doing it since I taught my mum to bring me milk. I was coaching her. And then the other elements of that are teamwork or collaboration. And then the kind of second one, so being around people is really important. And I've become more and more introvert the older I've become. I used to be crazy extrovert, and now I'm, on the kind of Myers-Briggs, whatever that scale is.
That was
Much more introvert. I need much more time on my own, probably because I'm a little bit more grumpy now I'm older. But the third element is this integrity piece. That if you are living out of integrity with who you are, it's time to get back to that. Because who you are got set when you were 7, 8 years old. That hasn't changed. But your knowledge and experience and behaviors and actions did, because you were given all this muck. And the job, I think, and you're probably going through this, and I just, when I saw you pop on camera today, I'm like, yeah, he's been through the journey of getting the muck off him.
Yeah.
Scraping it away. All the
Hard.
stuff that was given to you that's just useless. And it's not, because it moves you away from center. And the biggest thing is to get back to center. So that's what I would advise people to do as a kind of strategy for where to spend time when you're thinking about this is, don't engage in, because somebody's telling you that you can go and be a salesperson in this growing industry and in 6 months you'll make a ton of cash. That's a really bad way to prioritize what's important for you. That cash should never be the number one motivator. And if it is for you, I'm sorry, but there are people who
It's not
think
going to work.
You're going to be really unhappy fast, because when you don't get it, that's it. But I'd rather you think about your impact and your contribution and your connection and your giving back to, frankly, start with your spouse if you have one, if you're fortunate enough to be blessed with that gift. But then start with your family. And if you've got that gift too, it's just giving back to those people. And then think about, how do I now extend that circle of impact? When you do that, and one of my experience has been, do more of that, and you're never short of cash. The cash keeps coming.
Yeah, automatically.
People want to be with you. You've got yourself back in alignment. You're creating something, and people want to hang around with you. They want to be growing with you. I think everybody wants that belonging. Yeah.
I love that. Well, and the demand too, because a lot of times I think we're told, like, because I love the whiteboard exercise where it's kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna brainstorm, like, what do I really like to do, what really moves me, like what's the best time I've found purpose doing a task, and that's a good way to get it out there. But if you don't take actions to actually make that happen, and you're still in the back of your head like, well, I got to make this much money, or I want to be rich, and that's why I left, and I'm going to show everybody. And that pursuit, it's a pursuit of resources is what you're doing, where it's like, okay, I'm just gonna, get the food that I need. And it's like, okay, yeah, you got that. It's done. Good job. But if you think that that pursuit of money is actually going to ever be satisfied, because there's always more money, right? There's always more stuff you can buy and power you can have and all these kind of things.
Yeah.
But if you're miserable at the beginning, I don't know why you'd think that you'd be happy at the end, you know? And there's a learning process, and you could like your job more as you get better at it. But really, I think starting with that joy, like what provides you with the, you know, the fun that you're looking for, and then everything you're doing is actually just that. And then yeah, the money will come. And what I found is that more opportunities actually show up all the time, where you're kind of like, wow, I could say no to stuff too. And that's incredible. Like I should, like old me would have been like, you know what, that's a lot of money, I'm gonna go after that, and then whatever, I'll figure out being happy later on. And now I'm kind of like, ah, no, if it doesn't, if it's not aligned, then what's the point? I'll eventually be unhappy with
Yeah,
it
that's a
completely.
vital skill, right? As somebody asks you to do something, your initial thought should, even if it's exciting, I like this technique or
Mm.
tactic somebody taught me along the way of push it 3 months.
Ah,
Just say, yeah, you know, here we are. We're recording this in February. You would just say, yeah, May, let's do it in May. And then
oh,
you'll figure out it's going to happen or not. And you can pull the timeline up because you both parties are excited. Or it just, you know, how we connected was like that, right? There's an excitement level. Let's go fast, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
different to, yeah, let's do it in a few, because I love this environment. I have a podcast, and, you know, maybe we'll do some reciprocal stuff
oh,
here.
definitely.
But I think that's it. And I think people are asking the wrong questions about themselves. So in that position that you're kind of describing of people getting stuck, they're asking, how can I, how can I, how can I? And
Mm,
because the brain hasn't no experience of the answer they're seeking, the brain says, don't know.
yeah. That's not safe.
The conversation ends. And so they walk around going, I keep thinking about how I can escape this, but my brain's not helping me. It's all foggy. I don't know why it won't help me, because there's no experience.
Mm.
The brain is just a collection of memories and stories, frequently inaccurate. And it's not going to, if it hasn't got the answer of the expectation or the desired reality, you can't get there. But if you ask W leading questions like what, where, when, why,
Mm.
you get to much more meaningful answers, and quickly you can fill up papers and have a really good layout for, oh yeah, that's why, because I actually love being around people. Yeah, I'm really good at helping people get this thing done. I'm good at systems, I'm good at processes, and I could help somebody. But if you're saying, how can I leave? How can I
Okay, I
escape?
leave. Yeah. Oh, that's
How can
true.
I
You're
make
going
more money?
after
The brain just
something
says,
that doesn't
I don't
exist.
know. It's good.
How can I leave? There's no answer to that. You know, it's just a decision that you make. And then where are you going is really the question you should be asking. But, you know, in that regards, because I've gone through this process several times. So it's probably been like 4 times where I, you know, had a business, got a job, left, started a business. And, you know, I always learn something each time, which is why I continue to get jobs. Now I'm at the point where I'm kind of like, I really don't want to do that anymore. Like, I think I've taken it to the max of the stuff I can learn. And, you know, I had to realize myself, and I really had to find myself to be like, you know, who am I? What am I doing? Like, why am I doing the things? Why did I get the job in the first place? And it took me a while to understand myself enough to be like, oh no, that's my purpose. Like, this is, and what I did was actually examine the past jobs and the past companies and kind of said, like, what did I
Yeah,
enjoy about those things?
that's it.
But for
So,
me, I have, you know, I have like, and it's not a good thing. I have like extreme discipline where I could basically say like, well, I'm doing that for this long and I don't care because I said I was going to do it for that long. And and then I don't re-examine. I'm just like, then autopilot kicks in and I just go. Problem is I
yeah.
usually forget what the purpose was at the beginning, and then I have to come back to it. But do you like, is your techniques kind of do that kind of examination where, because a lot of people think they know themselves, right? And they have no idea. And that makes
Yeah.
every decision hard.
Yeah. You know, I think one of the reasons we connected was around depression and
Mm,
suicidal ideation. I know that's a really heavy answer to what you just asked me.
yeah.
Um, but it's true. Um, yeah, we come to that question of asking how too much, and it takes us into that dark well.
Mm,
So I think we have to get to the point of asking, who am I, and why am I so miserable? Because here's the crazy thing, and I've heard other people say this. At the peak of my career, at my highest earning capacity, I was at my most
Wow.
miserable. So more money than I'd seen.
Yeah.
More money that more money that I could do anything with, to the point of now I've got a mission to give this stuff away. And that was really liberating that it was happening. And there were all these perks that anybody on the outside would look in and say, you've got a dream life.
Yeah.
In
You're doing great.
California, you can see the beach. There's a palm tree swinging over your house. You can go to the beach every day you like, and you've got this consumer society with everything's at your fingertips, and you can have whatever you want. You can go on a plane and go anywhere in the world at a moment's notice. But I was miserable,
Hmm.
thoroughly miserable, because I wasn't doing what I wanted to be doing in my life. And that comes back to, you can't be yourself, I believe, if you don't know yourself.
Hmm.
And so that was the answer to it. Why was I going through that? And it carried on all the way. 2021 is kind of very landmark moment for me of, that suicidal thoughts, and then being on the point of having a really bad day. And that would have changed, everybody's life around me. That is because I still didn't know myself in 2021.
Yeah.
So I think it's an ongoing process, but the more you get to know yourself, the more you can be yourself, and the more people you can serve. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And for me, I actually went through the same thing where it was like I got all this stuff where I was like, well, I have the house thing and I have this going on and my kids are doing well. Like everything seems good, but
Yeah.
I can't remember being happy ever. And then once I realized that, like, okay, I achieved this stuff actually beyond the stuff that I thought I would have and
Yeah.
be doing. And then it was like, okay, I made it. Where's the happiness button? Like where's that? Where do I hit that? And then I feel good about everything I've done. And it just wasn't there. And so then it was a big, that was a big self-realization. Like, oh my gosh, this thing that I had put on a pedestal of
Let me ask you
achievement.
this. What was your process then for uncovering that? I've got one and I can share it if it's
Oh,
valuable.
my
What?
process was chaos. I literally changed everything. Like I looked up every technique. I went to therapy. I ran a marathon. I started cold dipping. I started doing yoga daily, meditation, breath work, sun gazing. Gave up alcohol, gave up beef, pork, and eggs. It turns out, well, and what I found was that through that chaos, because I was like, I don't know what's going to work. I was actually in the fitness industry for 10 years. And so I knew about a bunch of techniques, but I had always thought it was a bunch of woo woo, whatever. Like, hey, just get in the gym, just sweat, you'll feel better. And then once I realized, like, no, that didn't work. Like, that has nothing to do with it. Like, yeah, improving your body is something, but yeah. So I basically just went into, well, I guess I'm going to figure this out now because now I know I'm missing something. And over the course, what I actually found was that the diet component was my biggest issue. I basically had IBS for about 20 years or 25 years because I have like 100 food allergies and just didn't know it. I just thought everybody was bloated and uncomfortable and
Yeah.
nauseous all the time like me. And once I solved it, I was like, oh my gosh. And I think the beef and pork was a big part of it. Once I gave that up, within a month, I was just having these enormous revelations about myself and about how life is actually good and that I had been treating it like this job, like not just my job. I've been treating my life as a job, like, it's just something you do until you die. And then, and not that I didn't have, like, and I love my family and they're fantastic, but like, I was just in this like non-place and I didn't know it until I got the stuff I wanted and realized that that wasn't the answer. And so I better start figuring it out. So
Yeah.
that
So
was my process. It took
your
three
book should be
years.
called Extreme Experiments.
Yeah, I was just like, all right, we're doing this. I'm gonna figure it out. This is how I do everything else.
That's good. A lot of it's familiar because, I think I've tested, all those things, and most of what you say is kind of play some part of my life. Um, the piece that I think was really powerful for me, having done all of those things, the latest fad or tactic or biohack, right?
Yeah.
So try those things. And yeah, diet fluctuations. And now I'm kind of honing in on what might be working for me really well. But the exercise which changed my perspective was just to take a sheet of legal letterhead paper, turn it horizontal, landscape,
Mm.
draw a line across the middle of the page, And from today, going back to birth, above the line, write every single positive event, achievement, accomplishment that ever happened in your life. And you fill the whole page up. And I'm not saying people can do this in 10 minutes. It takes time. It took me a few weeks to kind of fill that in. And then, sad to say, you got to go below the line and look at every single negative event that happened to you. And then just kind of sit with it and not give it any meaning. Just go, well, that's my life from my memory. But you can have conversations with family members and friends and talk about other topics if you really want to dive into some of the stuff. But I did most of it on my own, and then I kind of talked to my wife about it. He filled in some gaps of the last 10 years of things that maybe I'd forgotten. But it was really uplifting from a positive perspective, because I never sat down and written down all the things I'd done. You mentioned marathon running. I ran 3 London marathons, and I kind of forget about that. Oh yeah, 3 London marathons, because that's what you do before you die, right? You run a marathon. And so, but the experience of each of those marathons was wildly different. And so there were lessons from each one. And so I think when I was going through that positive spin, that's what changed the game for me, of going, wow, you did achieve an awful lot, and it's a lot better than you think. Because you've been focused on all this stuff down here. The divorce, and I have an autistic son, and we had such a journey to get to the point of having a family, and you just beat yourself up because you go, well, what did I do? Well, why me? Why can't I just have the nuclear family of 2 or 3 kids?
Imagine a world where your brand transcends visibility, embedding itself into the consciousness of your customers. Welcome to the AI Branding Bootcamp, where this vision becomes reality. Dive into AI-powered research, strategy, and execution to create a brand that's not just recognized, but felt. From crafting your brand's avatar to mastering AI-generated content, emerge with a brand that resonates deeply. Ready to transform your brand into an unforgettable experience? Join us at the AI Branding Bootcamp. The future of branding begins now. You were talking about the running the marathon and
oh, it's all about my
your wife.
son.
Oh yeah, your line. Oh, I love that.
Negative line, yeah. It's yeah, just all these life events that you attach a meaning to that isn't positive, and then you focus there, you dwell there, and that was a real eye-opening moment to think about all the thoughts you have in a day, 60,000+ of them, depending on who you are and how much you listen to yourself, and most of them are negative because you're focused on all the times you messed it up.
Well, that's
because you an expectation of yourself. But if you look on paper, what did you do? You've told us some incredible things about what you've done, and you've gone employer, entrepreneur, and you've been through this sequence 4 times. Family, you've built that out. And I always say the hardest thing you'll ever do in life is get married and have kids.
Oh yeah, I mean it's.
And we worry that making money is harder than that. It isn't. The hardest thing is meeting somebody who will commit the rest of their life to you and stay together for the commitment. That's an incredibly difficult thing to do. And then because the marriage is never straightforward. And then the family piece, because we're all parents who were raised by parents who didn't know what they were doing, and they were raised by parents who didn't know what they were doing. And so that is what's really powerful. So I always think about that as if you got married and you've got kids and you're still in that environment, you've done the hardest thing you'll ever do. Yes, there'll be bereavements, and people will leave you, your loved ones, they will sadly die, and we will have to go through those moments. But the fact that you've procreated and create this environment for yourself, and all the things that you had to go through for that to happen and stay as a unit, is extremely difficult. So yeah, I think that was the stuff that really changed my lens of, oh yeah, love surrounds me now and always. That's kind of this new mantra. Love surrounds me now and always, is because it was already there, but I'm looking below the line all the time going, how can I get out of this mess?
Yeah, I'm so miserable. Well, I love how you mentioned about the family and kids, because I had that sentiment. I think it was yesterday or the day before, where I was thinking like, all the things you could do in life, all the big projects you can have, and the companies you could build and the properties you could make and all these things. But then it comes to like your family, and literally it's the biggest, most difficult and most significant project you have is making another person. Like, and we kind of fluff it off like, oh, I'm gonna be a dad, like whatever. And you're kind of like, no, you're creating a copy of you essentially, and this person that you decided to be with. and you're going to raise this project for ever. Like it doesn't stop, ideally, right? And we kind of treat it like it's just something everybody does. And I'm like, no, this is the most significant thing you could possibly do is build another person. And that's what we're doing. So I love that because
Yeah, no,
once you realize that,
you
it's like,
divorce the two things, right? There's the mechanics of any idiot can get married. Any idiot can father a child, right? But there's a big difference between keeping it all together. The
oh
achievement is when people say to me, people ask, what's your biggest achievement? I say, well, it depends what context, but it is keeping the family
yeah. Mm.
together. That's a much bigger achievement because the
Oh, it's
idiots
easy.
tend to marry people and have kids and tend not to stay together, not to keep it together, and continue to be an idiot, even though they did this really magnificent, deeply committing
Impactful
thing.
thing. Yeah.
And yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, it is it's really hard, and that's why whenever I speak to my clients who are feeling down or telling me they're broken, I say, you're not broken.
No,
Show me those
you're
pictures
great.
again. And they look at me and sometimes they're crying. Yeah, sometimes it's men, sometimes it's women.
Huh?
And I just say, this means so much to you, but you're focused on your toxic company or boss
Mm,
that means nothing to you, but you've for some reason you've become disconnected with the thing that means the most. So let's get you back to that. And that gets you back in this centered alignment, which I spent a lot of time thinking about. Yeah.
wow, it's been well, and my son's autistic too, or one of my sons are autistic, and
Oh,
you get that sometimes. My son's actually in a diaper still. He's 11, doesn't talk. Like it's pretty severe situation, and people say like, oh my gosh, like that's so courageous. You're doing this. You're able to take care of your son. And I'm like, he's my son. Like, what do you mean? Like, there's no limit to what I'm gonna
yeah.
do to make sure he's happy and alive and moving forward. And it's but people, it is a decision because you can say this is too hard, and unfortunately some kids get given away to the state where it's just like I can't care for this child. And so a lot of times my wife and I just feel so blessed that we've been able to do it because it's and the flip side is it's like we see other people who can't afford 90 to $100 an hour therapy for 5 days a week for his whole life moving forward. And it's kind of like we
Yeah.
are incredibly blessed. And even with that 6 hours a day of full-time ABA therapy, we're still kind of feel like we're doing the bare minimum. Like we feel like, man, we should be exploring
Yeah,
more
I
options,
agree with you.
pushing.
Oh, you're pulling on my heartstrings because my son's 8 now, and
Mm.
he is verbal,
Oh,
and
good.
so well, he's speaking words. So we have long conversations with him now, but that wasn't the case for the first 4 years of his life. So we had all that difficulty, and he was born with heart defects and
Oh, yeah.
comorbidities that you kind of get with autistic kids too. Um, but I treat it as, yes, it is the biggest blessing. I'm a better person for it. I always felt like a good man, but now I feel like I can be great
Oh,
because
I love
I
that.
always be able to look to him. And I do think he leads me. He was in this room here at home, and he came in here and jumped on me this morning at 5:30 in the morning. And it's just, there is no better feeling for me in the world. And you probably experienced this of just holding him, and he's just looking at reading my work. He's looking at these are your words, and I'm like, yep, these are my words.
Oh.
What did you write? You want me to read you about what I'm writing about? And then we'll go, no, can I look at kites or something like that? So we go look at, but it's just, yeah, to
That's
have that
fantastic.
physical
Well,
and he's just magical. Yeah, it's like having a super kid. I think everyone thinks their kids are amazing, but I think having this different perspective on the world is
it's
really
incredible.
powerful. So yeah, I love that we have that connection.
Oh
It's
yeah.
really good.
Well, it's incredible too, because for me, like, you think you're like, "Oh, I'm a good dad, and whatever. But, in terms of like the patience that you need and the compassion and the empathy and just because really what my son shows is just these raw emotions, right? I mean, he really, he has a mentality of like a 3 or a 4 year old, but it's very pure. It's like it's right there. This is exactly what he wants and what he needs. And you know, you could look into his eyes and he'll smile and you'll kind of feel it and you'll be like, oh man, you're connecting on ways that I probably still don't understand, but I had no way to understand prior, because it's like
Yeah.
I've never seen motion expressed like that. So yeah, the amount of lessons I got from him is incredible. And for my wife too, you know, my wife will tell you, like, you know, she's not the most patient person. And it's kind of like, too bad you got this awesome, you know, project you're working on that requires infinite patience. And so guess what you get
Yeah.
to learn? And it's like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what we needed. So, you know, it's amazing how things work out.
Is I have to ask, is he physical? Has physical contact or
Oh
no
yeah, yeah.
physical
So
contact?
he's hyposensitive. So most autistic children are, you know, I'm not sure about your son, but they're hypersensitive, right? They don't like lights, they don't like sound, they don't like pressure. And my son's the exact opposite. So he walks around with like a speaker on against his ear. He's watching TV. It's like right in front of his face. You know, he's jumping on a trampoline like 8 hours a day. You know, he's always in
Wow.
motion, and he's, you know, super strong too and fast. It's kind of like, oh man. So
Running, yeah, that's
that was the
yeah,
whole other
wow.
side. So actually, part of the transformation that I went through was for him, because I was like, well, I can't die, you know, and not that I was suicidal, but I was like, man, I know my blood pressure is high, and I know I don't feel good. Like I don't like my, you know, just how I looked.
Mm.
Even if you look at me a couple of years ago, I had like a swollen face and you know, skin issues and stuff like that from the food allergies. And I was like, well, I got to figure this out, because I'm not gonna let anybody put him in a home. Because you want to say like, hey, we're gonna leave, you know, my son to my family, and we'll make sure that they have enough money to make sure everything's fine. But it's a very difficult situation. So there's a good chance that even if we set something up, that he may end up in a home at some point. And we're just like, wow, I can't make that. I can't let that happen. So now I just decided to live forever. So that's my plan.
Yeah. It changed my marginal decade, as I call it. You know, thinking about, well, it'd be nice to get to 80. Now for me, it's like, well, it has to be 90 because I want him to
Yeah.
be 50 before I'm not here anymore. So yeah, I kind of changed the way I think about, yeah, I always want to live a long time, but now I want to live a lot longer because I do want him to be around when he's my age.
Yeah.
You know, I just turned 50 last year. And so for that, it's like, oh, okay. Wouldn't it be good if I could be here for his 50th birthday and we could do
Oh,
something similar to my 50th? And just, yeah, it's powerful. It's good fuel.
it
Yeah.
is.
Motivation to
Well,
be
really,
better.
it was exactly what I needed, because I brought, because you know, I have this thing about being selfish or trying not to be selfish, where I like it's my first examination of what my action is. Like, am I being selfish here? Am I just doing this for me because I want it? And and of course you should do stuff for you if you want it. Like, that's part of being alive. But for the longest time I had a lot of guilt around it, or where I was just like, no, I don't deserve it. Like I should give this away, or I should do this. And it was well, it was really a self worth issue, in addition to a bunch of other issues. But once I was able to take it outside of me and be like, no, you know, for me, my personal growth was, no, me being healthier is good for my family. And me being stronger is good for my family. And me making more money is good for the family. And so it's been much easier to accept things, because then I'm like, oh, it's really not for me. But I should be able to appreciate it too, for me. Like, yeah, good job. Yay.
Yeah, well, love it. Yeah, it's good. What's his name?
Damien. Damien's my
Yeah.
11-year-old, and then I have I have two sons. They're 10 months apart. So my 10-year-old is named Declan, and he's a different kind of incredible, where he's like just ridiculously dedicated to sports. Already has switched the college that he wants to go to like 6 times. His career path. You know, I read the book every night. Like he does stuff where I'm just like, oh my gosh. He's a combination of kind of what I am, and then what my wife is, which is like a genius. My wife is the genius. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, this is this is interesting that you could wrap it all up into one. So it's he's very advanced at stuff, but he's also super compassionate, and he's really good with you know, autistic kids and small children, just because he has that mindset of helping.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Awesome.
and then I'm kind of like, well, how can I make him better? He already seems better than me. But then I do get better. I'm like, okay, I got to be better. So it's all
Well, it
great.
forces you, you mentioned earlier, it forces you to go and take a look at different resources that
Mhm.
perhaps weren't put in front of you because of different circumstances, and now you have this environment where you can go and go, well, where do I go and get those resources from? Yeah, I think
Oh
that's
yeah,
good.
no, it's great. Well, I just involve him in everything whenever I can. Well, now I'm kind of like I'm thinking about because I start all these projects with my son Declan. You know, we're building a spaceship and we're building a robo or we call it robo cookie. It's like a single cookie making machine, and we built it, prototypes and stuff like that. But now I'm thinking for my autistic son. So what he does is his like main activity is he finds individual clips of like Disney movies and then he puts them on repeat and then he somehow goes online and he finds other languages of the same scene and he'll find the same words within that scene in a different language. And so he's done it with like Turkish and Japanese and Spanish and French, and but it's always the same scene. And so it's like, so my project now is like, man, if I just sat in there for like 10 minutes a day, I bet I could start to identify patterns and figure out what the heck he's doing all the time. So you can still do projects,
But
you know?
yeah, we have that same thing. Yeah, seeing he can see patterns. So he said something. Really, I don't know if I recall it now. There was something he did this morning about that. Yeah, just oh, that's right. So you know when you're on Amazon or any e-commerce site and you can see the product, the physical product, and
Mhm.
there's the magnifying glass to zoom in.
Yeah.
So he zooms in and he's telling me that is way too close. And I'm kind of thinking about that. All right, what does that mean? Because he might be saying, how can anyone enjoy the product when it's zoomed
Uh,
in to that level? You know, and so it just sees the world very differently.
oh yeah.
And he's into anything that kind of flies in the air, and trampolining is a big thing. Sunday morning we'll be back in the trampoline park because he has a trampoline here, but he likes to go to the trampoline
Good
park
advice.
because it's other things. But
Oh, it's
yeah,
incredible.
it's fascinating, isn't it? It's like a really enjoyable journey. And yeah, it's isolated us a little bit from maybe the life we thought we were going to have.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't change that. Yeah.
No. Well, and I completely agree. And it's and you can't imagine doing that either. I mean, this is your job. You've been given this. So, it's a
Yeah.
super blessing. But well, not my wife and I were talking about that. I mean, there's an 80% divorce rate when it comes to like autistic parents, like parents of autistic children. And I think it's just because it is so difficult that if you're well, if you're not a team, that's going to be a big deal because it is easy to be like, the way I kind of put the mentality is like, well, you only have to, handle this situation half time, 50% of the time, you know, and it's a terrible way to look
Yeah.
at it. But without the right
Well, we have,
support, it's hard.
there's a lot of, to me, to you, juggling,
Oh, yeah.
the time blocks of time to give each other respite, right? Just to say, you're going to do 3 or 4 hours of whatever you need to do. Like if she wants to go and do hair care, nail care, manicure, pedicure
Mm,
stuff, get a
yeah, go crazy.
massage, get to the gym. But like I send her to the gym and say, look, just go for as long as you like.
Mm,
If you want to go and get coffee after the gym, go and get coffee and sit in somewhere else and just so we spend a lot of time giving each other as much hours as we can of freedom,
hmm
and especially when it's tense, because whenever he's sick is really intense, and if there's ever a medical issue, it's really intense. So
Yeah.
and you do need a break after that. So we are very conscious with each other to listen and be flexible to the temperature
Oh,
of the other
yeah.
individual. And
Yeah. Be
yeah,
like,
yesterday I needed it. I was kind of like I need to lie down on the bed.
I
Just
know.
give me 25,
They get home
25
and you're like,
minutes.
I need
Yeah.
to stop right now.
Well,
My son doesn't.
because every day, yeah, I work till 2 p.m., right? So at 2 p.m., everything shuts down. People say, and it's because I wanted to be in his life, right? So now I pick him up from school. Today we have a medical appointment, and then we go and do some other fun stuff afterwards.
Oh, that's
But yeah, after 3 or 4 hours of intensity, sometimes you just like,
you're like,
uh,
okay.
finished work yet? I could really do with just give me
Just a
20
second.
minutes and I'll be energized, I'll be back, I'll be ready for dinner or whatever the thing is. And yeah, I would that is enjoyable. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's enjoyable stuff.
Well, that's awesome too. And I think my best days are always when I put the most work in and then I stop, like completely stop. And it's just like, okay, now I'm doing this and I can relax. And And actually, my son Damien taught me that because I used to try to work from home. I go work at the office and then I come home and I'm like, well, let me get a few more things done. And he literally, I'd be typing on my computer. He'd like pull my hand off my computer. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a heart attack if I keep trying to work. And so he's the reason why I was able to let go of work after I got home from work because I was like, it's a waste of time. He's gonna stop me. And so now I'm much more present at home. I can
Yeah.
relax and I don't feel, like yeah, I'm being lazy is really what you think. And so now it's been huge.
Well, so I don't feel like I'm being lazy because of kind of there's six high productive hours. I consider
Yeah,
this is my work.
you get it
This
in.
stuff's fun. I help people. So um yeah, but I that kind of 2 to 2:30 is my close down. And then what I will do is open up a messaging window. So typically between kind of 5 and 8, if I need to message people, I'll do some messaging, but I'm not working.
Mm, yeah.
It just be a text message from a client. It might be a text message from a friend. It could be something that's on, LinkedIn or one of the social platforms. And but it's just connection there. But typically at that point, he's doing what you were saying about Damien is that, he's got an iPad, the headphones are on, he's watching Moana or any other Disney movie, you name it. And yeah, he's not searching for he does look at multi-language. You've really made me think about that because he does look at Spanish and Chinese a
Oh,
lot.
really?
And think, what's that about? What he's always got Spanish stuff on. When he was a kid, he was in Spanish school
Uh,
at like to 0 to like 2 years old. He had a Spanish carer and it was fully Spanish speaking. And so it makes me wonder, can he actually speak Spanish?
oh,
It
I
just needs
know.
to put it with somebody. And then the Chinese thing's crazy. It's just like, yeah, you're watching Chinese videos. You know that?
Oh,
Am I? Yeah, am I? Yeah,
well, my
like
son, we could actually
knows Chinese.
we could pull up like the Frozen soundtrack in Japanese and he'll be able to find the song. He'll be like this one. And it's like, okay, so can you read? Like how much
Going
can
on,
you
yeah, yeah.
do? Well,
Yeah,
this has
we
been
see pattern recognition. Yeah, so spatial awareness, pattern recognition. You mentioned the strength. He's freakishly strong, but he's very careful with it.
yes. Yeah, that's how my
Like
son
he
is
can
too.
do like he can almost pick mum up. Now, I'm not going to disclose her weight. That would be a really bad thing to do. But that's incredible for what he weighs. Let's just put the calculation, right? This is more than 3 times body weight. This is Olympic standard powerlifting, and he's 8.
Yeah,
And
it might
that's
not
it's
stop.
like, oh, you are freakishly strong. I hope you don't hit one of us one day. Because he's hit me with stuff in the face, but accidentally. But he's very caring,
Mm.
very conscious of other people in pain.
Ah.
So he doesn't like when we're out in supermarkets. So this conversation's gone all over the place.
I know this is
But
what happens.
we're in supermarkets or we're in public places. If there is a baby crying, he is going to go and see what's going on.
Really?
Yeah, and he's going to
That's
go and
cool.
ask the mum. He's going to go and ask the mum or the person, "Is the baby okay?"
Wow. Oh, that's super. That's awesome.
It's just it's incredible. He's incredibly caring, and this year in the classroom he's in is kind of similar in a specials classroom, or you might call it that, special
Mm.
education. And he has therapy comes in, so the occupational therapy, speech therapy, all of that happens in the environment. But he's actually the oldest,
Mm.
and this year he's just has had this transformation. And the main teacher there, she said to us, he's a different kid because he's like dad. He's
Huh.
out there. He's making and there's tears and there's tantrums. He's the first one over.
Wow.
It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
That's so
So
cool.
it's yeah, just fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So yeah, look, we could talk for hours about this,
Oh
I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah. I might have you back on. We'll just talk about autism dads unite because it's
That's
it's
that's the
funny.
new podcast. Yeah, Mark and
Well, that's the
James.
thing. It's
Yeah,
kind of like having kids in the first place, where you're kind of like you try to describe to somebody like what having a kid is, because they're like, "Oh, well, what's the big deal?" And it's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't even explain to you what the big deal is." And I think it's that level with autism too, where it's kind of like I could try to tell
yeah,
you what it's like, but it's not going to do it justice, and
yeah.
that's
We
fine.
have we've been talking a lot about similarities. I think for the audience, it's important to say this: if you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism.
So
can't,
true.
you got to be careful of labels. Autism itself is a label, and we try to steer away from that. We haven't had a long conversation with him about it yet, but he's so smart. I'm sure he's very clear that his brain's operating in a different way.
Mm.
But the key things for us is making sure that the labels are, you know, limit that, and don't say that all autistic kids are
Like this.
savants and geniuses,
Oh
because
yeah,
it's just not true.
the superhero, superhero.
Yeah,
Then what's the superpower?
we're not, we don't like the capes. We don't like the awesome, spelled AUSOME. We don't
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
We we don't like the jigsaw pieces. There's things we stay away from. We spend a lot of time with actually autistic adults, and some of the things they dislike, and they give us lots of feedback. And so we're just very careful about, the labels and the environments that the society of ableist will put people into, because
Oh
this is the best way to treat or care for these people. And
yeah.
it's
Mm.
like, no, 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 hold on a minute. What if they could understand everything you were saying?
Yeah.
Have you thought about, yeah,
Well, we
yeah,
just treat them
we've,
like people. It's kind of like when with my son, he's nonverbal, but I talk to him constantly when I'm watching him, and I'm just like
great, do
talking about
that.
my day, and really what I realized was I was like I'm trying to respect him and be like, hey, I talk to everybody else. Why would I not talk to you, even if you can't talk back? And so, and he doesn't really understand what I'm saying most of the time, but I'm still saying it. And now it's almost like a good way to it's a
He's
self-reflection
understanding
method.
something. Yeah, yeah, he's understanding something you just don't know yet.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. So
like I always like that, whether you call it astral planes, there's just something going on in a different sphere that we cannot see it
now,
because we're not inside the autistic brain. And that's one of the most powerful things about it, is that you've met one autistic person. Yeah, you've met one autistic
you met
person,
one.
because
You want me mine?
there's so much more. There's
Yeah.
so much more you don't know. Yeah, yeah.
But I will
Yeah,
say that everybody should try, still say hi, still, yes, they might not be, reflecting how or responding the way you usually get the response, but you still should
yeah,
treat them just like another person, just like you should with everybody. And that's the best way
yeah,
to handle it. You don't have to be kick gloves
yeah.
or anything like that. Just, be
I think,
nice.
it's funny you said that. My wife is impatient too, and I think that's a powerful thing. One of the things that we do find we have to remind family of
Mm,
is, when you ask him a question or talk to him, be patient.
mm,
He's got to process that. And, it's like, imagine you've got the internet in the brain, and then you've got a one bar mobile phone
mm.
coming out the mouth, or one bar mobile phone just from a physical movement. And, and that's the processing speed. So just don't expect things to happen quickly.
Yeah.
And you
And
talked
don't be
about the
offended by it, by the way.
no, yeah, don't be this. You talked about the developmental delay. Rory's 8, but he's probably like a 4 or 5 year old. So we've had this like crazy elongated childhood with him.
Mm.
Do you feel like, Damien, that you've had that?
Oh yeah,
We've just had
that's the best way I've found to
most
describe it. Where it's kind of
infancy
like,
ever. Yeah,
well, for other parents, you just say, "Oh yeah, I remember when your kid was like 2, 3, 4." Like, just imagine that they were always that age forever.
yeah.
And except now, my son. So my dad, I'm like 6'1", 6'2", and it's fit. But my dad is like 300 pounds and like 6'5", and my
Oh,
son is looking like that. So he's 11, but he's 150 plus pounds, and he's like not the tallest kid, but he's just like built. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's a giant. I remember the first time I said, Damien, no, you can't have this. And he like pushed me over with one hand. And I was like, oh no, it's already happening. So I'm gonna have to put on weight now. Anyways, we can talk about this stuff all day. I think we definitely have to have you back though, because I would love to do yeah, kind of subject to just fatherhood of autism, and how it kind of affects everything you do and changes your entire life. And
yeah.
we can
I
support
think,
each other because you need that.
if someone's watching this to now, and you watch the whole thing because you're an autistic dad, congratulations. It's a blessing. Enjoy it. As tough as it is, we know how tough that can be. But I think the key thing is, a lot of the things we said at the beginning are driven by this thing.
Yes.
And that's the connection, is
All
that,
connected.
yes, I have to stay in alignment with myself, yes, but the next thing, or immediately my next thought is, what am I doing for my wife? What am I doing for my son? And am I being the best version of me for them? And what do they need?
Mm,
And if I don't know, am I asking them and am I giving it to them? And I'm just letting go of work. The work will always be there. The money will, you said it
you'll
better than
figure it
anything.
out.
The money's always there. There's always more money. If you ever had a job, you know how to make money, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that you're an entrepreneur. Yeah, you put some task and activity together and you get paid for it. That doesn't matter whether you're an employee or an entrepreneur. It happens in both ways. It just might happen differently than you expect. The paychecks come more irregular, maybe. But yeah.
Oh yeah, but well, and the thing
Okay.
is, it's like you'll figure it out. Like just keep going, it'll be fine. One foot in front of the
That's
other,
right.
and it well, and if you let it flow versus trying, because my biggest problem, and this would be the last thing, my biggest problem was basically like I had made a structure, like this is how everything's gonna go, and the minute that it wasn't that structure, it was like offensive to me, where it's like, no, I said this, and it's just like, no, if you just said I was headed there, and then all these things, all these opportunities and things happened, and I moved around and still got to where I wanted to be. But that takes a lot of work. So maybe people could, look for a job with you. Where can people learn more about what you're doing and who you're helping, all that kind of
Yeah.
fun stuff?
I'd love for people to meet me on LinkedIn. That's my platform of choice. It's where I hang out with senior executives. The vice president and above is typically the market I work in. But that doesn't mean to say if you're not at that level yet and you want to be there one day, then you should reach out to me and I will help you for free and give you a ton of information and resources that are going to help you get to the next level. And I think about it not as a career ladder, but a career jungle gym.
Hmm.
And that there are plenty of directions you can go. If you didn't learn that from this conversation, then you'll learn that from me anyway. You don't want to get to that top of the ladder and realize you climbed up the wrong building. Yeah,
Oh,
you want to go and have fun in a gym. Yeah.
love it. That's a good
So yeah, LinkedIn.
good note to end on. Well, thank you so much, James.
Great.
Really appreciate your time. Love your journey. Love what you're doing and your mission. And I wish you luck.
Thank you. Cheers, Mark.
All right. This has been Podcast Mark. Tune in next time for more sort of business talk that always involves into self-development and family life.